My name is Jane Fernandes, and I'm the president of Antioch College. She, her, or the inclusive they, them are my pronouns. And I'm here to deliver the State of College address for 2022. I'm here now in South Hall, and on the Antioch campus today, it's been a rather intense day. So I'm a little bit tired, and I think a lot of people who live and work here after this intense discussion that we had across people with different views of things and important things that we need to listen to that concern our students. Just wanted to mention that if I'm a little bit underperforming, it's because of the intensity of the day. So I want to tell you about a little bit about me. So I thought I'd cover a little bit about my being deaf. My mother sent me to a corner drugstore when I was a young girl. My goal was to purchase items without anyone knowing I was deaf or causing any kind of concern in the store. So when I got home, I was proud to tell her I did it. No one knew. You can probably imagine the internal conflict brewing in a child who's so happy that no one knows what she is and whose mother works hard to make that so. You see, my deaf mother, for excellent reasons, wanted to keep me safe, and for her, passing as hearing would accomplish that. She poured all of herself into me, and I learned how to speak, read, and write English passably. I was a graduate student at the University of Iowa when I first interacted with deaf people who signed, and the whole universe opened to me. I spent every spare minute on weekends in the homes of people who I discovered were deaf like me, yet very different than me. And somehow I felt really relaxed and complete for the first time in my life. I gradually learned American Sign Language, which should have been mine from birth. For a few years in Iowa as a grad student in comparative literature, I refused to use my voice and signed everything, no matter where I went or the people I was interacting with. Later at Gallaudet University, the world's only university designed for deaf people, where deaf people called me not deaf enough. Today, I live in neither a deaf or hearing world. While that can sometimes be difficult, it offers me dual and opposing identities, like saying both and. As people have opened doors for me, I've tried to open doors to higher education for all qualified students who want to receive it in my life and career. In 15 months here, students emerging from COVID have brought a generational shift. Usually I refer to our students as future generations of leaders, but today's Antioch students are the leaders and voices of equity and justice our nation desperately needs. Antioch has always been cutting edge in its politics. These students, when they graduate, will go out and lead complex, inclusive communities in new and exciting ways. They are resilient, feisty, people-centered, values-driven, and focused on truth and action. They get better at who they are and what they do here at Antioch. We welcome 32 new students this fall. The needs of our students are shifting. 84% identify as LGBTQ, and 16% of those are transgender. 47% of our incoming students are Black and brown, half are first generation. Today, despite significant strides toward equality, our politics threaten our progress on race, gender, sexuality, and other human identities like never before. I'm proud that Antioch attracts LGBT students at a high percentage. It's a privilege and an honor to be a safe space in Ohio for students seeking an inclusive community of academic excellence, a place to know themselves and people different from themselves and get an excellent liberal arts education and do great work. Antioch has a long history of prioritizing the well-being of Black, Indigenous, and other students of color and progressive activism. We envision a campus and a world where Indigenous lands are acknowledged, our climate is protected, undocumented and international students and workers have access to bipartisan pathways to citizenship. Gun acquisition and ownership are controlled. Feminism is a shared common value. LGBTQ people are celebrated and have access to safe and affirming healthcare. Disability justice is embedded in our culture, and workers' labor is valued. With this vision, students lead the way. They get behind a better future for our people and planet. Even as the community manages through uncertain times, we look beyond current challenges and keep our sights on Antioch's vibrant future. As Michelle Obama suggests, we can have our feet planted both in reality and pointed toward progress. As I have been reflecting recently on Antioch, Michelle Obama's book, Becoming, reminded me of another critical quote. That is, for me, becoming isn't about arriving somewhere or achieving a certain aim. I see it as forward motion, a means of evolving, a way to reach continuously towards a better self. She adds, the journey doesn't end. When I think of Antioch College, we too are in a state of becoming. Our famous co-op program is an example of becoming. Antioch has always led the way in producing graduates who know how to succeed in today's workplaces while their toes point toward tomorrow. The liberal arts is the best educational model to cultivate the skills most prized by employers. The ability to write well, think well, read well, solve problems, and understand complex communities our businesses serve. And at Antioch, our students spend 1/4 of their time applying those skills in real-world workplace settings through our famous co-op program. That's because we cannot train students in these sophisticated skills. Students have to learn them. The skills are transferable between settings, and our graduates can adapt them to the world of work. That's especially true in sectors like technology and manufacturing. Our graduates can keep up. We don't just prepare students for their first jobs, but for their last jobs. This generation of students wants not only a paycheck, but also a purpose. They're seeking meaningful work. That's why we integrate workplace experience throughout our curriculum as students are figuring out what kind of work they want to do in their professions and communities. We have 127 students enrolled this year. We've set a goal to reach 200 students in line with our most recent report to the Higher Learning Commission. As much as we focus on bringing students into our community, we need to redouble our efforts to ensure they graduate to get the full benefit of a college education. Many of our students might proceed in a different line. We will likely see more transfers, adult degree completers, and students pausing to work to pay for college or to help a family member. Ultimately, Antioch has to redouble our efforts to get them across the finish line. That delivers on the promise of higher education so that the next generation is better off than the last. This is essential for more and more students who are the first in their families to go to college. As a community, we work together on a strategic plan, which I've shared with many of you, and the Board of Trustees approved. Our goals and objectives are clear, and we are developing key performance indicators. We're working very hard to achieve financial stability. We do this work in 3 primary ways: managing expenses, diversifying our revenues beyond tuition, and doubling down on fundraising. We exist today because of the loyal alumni support and generous donors. We have always been a college that changes lives. Some of our incoming class are eligible for a Pell Grant, indicating a very high level of need. In fact, I think it's about 77% of our students in the first year are eligible for a Pell Grant. Our commitment to serving students with high financial needs means we rely on fundraising and donor generosity. Advancement has launched the Antioch Activate campaign to raise $2.5 million by December 31st, 2022, and we need everyone's support. Our commitment to affordable college education includes closing opportunity gaps, closing equity gaps, helping break the cycle of low-income families, and breaking down systems of oppression into manageable pieces. I would like us to understand more about what we ought to be known for. And I'd like us to be more, perhaps boastful, or use a stronger voice in claiming what Antioch ought to be known for. Antioch is a pillar of Yellow Springs and the higher education communities in Ohio. We want to make college affordable and accessible to all students and families with high financial needs by enrolling, retaining, graduating, and placing our students on paths to future success at a rate higher than any other institution of higher education in our state. When I first arrived on campus, I learned that we were considering turning the Antioch farm over to another organization because we could not manage it. I met an anonymous alumni benefactor who wanted to support our farm financially. Today, just 1 year later, the farm is thriving. It's a thriving place. We still grow food for our students. We're becoming known as a microfarm specialist, and we understand more about making soil as nutritious as possible. We're learning how to grow the most vegetables or produce on the smallest plots of land. Farmers from all around here come to see and learn what we're doing. We have a particular emphasis on Black farmers and supporting Black farmers. The Yellow Spring community volunteers to help maintain the farm. And the state of Ohio has certified our farm. We're looking at ways to share our vegetables and stunning flowers with the greater community. We hope to have 1,000 students who learn microfarming and who will practice it in their homes and communities. And that this type of farming will spread to families in communities and in places where there are food deserts or where food is difficult to achieve. We can be part of making food accessible to everyone through these methods. We can activate food deserts in Southwest Ohio and teach people how to grow their own food, not necessarily as a career, but as a way of living. We are keen on creating conditions that make it possible for farmers to earn a living wage. We want to draw students who want to study farming. We can create certification in microfarming. And all of this happened because of work the college wanted to do and the benefactor who wanted to support our work. In just 1 year, I've seen the greatness of Antioch, and I'm overwhelmed with gratitude to be part of this community. I thank you for listening to my presentation, and I ask you to remember to vote on November 8th as if your lives depend on it, because they do.
Thank you so much, Jane. I'm going to ask if anybody has any questions that they would like to put into the Q&A section of this presentation on your right. And if there are no questions now, you're welcome to leave questions. We have one here. If we have no other questions during this time in the Q&A, then we're happy to answer any questions. Following this presentation, you'll go back to the lobby where you were at various tables. For those of you that haven't seen it yet, you'll be coming into a virtual conference center where you'll be at tables. You are able to move chairs. You can double click to go from one table to another. Whatever chair you double click on is the group that you will be visiting. When you're at a table, you'll be able to turn your mic and your camera on and communicate with those that are at your table. And again, social hour, you can jump from table to table and communicate with whoever you want to talk to. I hope that you stick around and say hi to everybody. It's always great to see all of our alumni and friends and donors together. We do have one question that came into the Q&A from Mark. Jane, could you share some of the KPI the college is focused on?
Well, we have KPIs for each one of the strategic plan goals and objectives. But the example I gave of enrollment goals are one of them. So we hope to create a plan that will increase enrollment from 127 to 200 with plan, a strategy, and action steps to get us there within a time frame. Another goal which concerns us a lot is our graduation rate. So we will have a KPI for increasing graduation rate in general, as well as graduation rates for specific groups of students. We have other KPIs related to things like facilities or priorities, including diversity, equity, and inclusion, Coretta Scott King Center, kinds of programs we offer. We have KPIs related to revenue generation, which will help to make us a more sustainable college. And I guess overall, our biggest KPI is about creating a sustainable college. Overall, I very much want to pour most of my time into creating a way for Antioch to be assured of sustainability in the long run. And we'll be looking at different kinds of business models to achieve that goal. We don't actually have a KPI yet, but that's a big one.
Thank you, Jane. We have a few more questions coming into the Q&A. The next two questions seem very similar, so I'm going to ask them both simultaneously. Meredith asks, in what ways can Antioch gain more students? And I believe, let's see here. Robert says, what are you actually going to do to improve enrollment?
The way to work on improving enrollment, the primary way that I know to be successful is to work on the kinds of programs that we have on campus and the ways that we deliver them. So as students become more, we are more adequately or completely meeting the needs of students on campus in terms of classes, co-ops, facilities, programs, we can expect that retention of students will be better, and that leads to greater enrollment. As new students enter, there's a robust group of students who are sustaining the college, pursuing through their 4 years. But of course, the most obvious answer is related to recruiting and admitting more students. So to do that, we have to reach out to more schools. We have to have a strategy which will communicate more broadly and clearly why students should want and need to come to Antioch. I think one of our biggest areas to improve is our strategic communications regarding what we want to be known for. And then when we know that, have a robust and assertive communication plan to get the word out, especially to where students we're trying to communicate with, students we're trying to recruit tend to be.
Thank you, Jane. The next question I'm going to pull up here is from Steve. How is the high proportion of LGBTQ students shaping recruitment strategies?
Well, I personally, I was surprised at the great percentage of LGBTQ students and the percentage of transgender students within the group of LGBTQ students. So I think we definitely want to look for places where we could try to attract more such students. I've made some calls to organizations that serve LGBTQ people in Ohio and asked for ways that we could connect admissions and their work, things like that. I think they definitely a strength that we have, and we want to build on that strength. But if you have any suggestions, I'd be happy to hear them from you. If you have any now.
I believe they would leave them in the chat if you have any suggestions. Everything is being recorded right now, so your suggestions are also being recorded. Jane, I'm going to go ahead and ask the next question in the Q&A. Outside of Yellow Springs, very few people know we are reopened. Are there plans to advertise to attract more students?
Well, it's a disturbing trend I've noticed. When I leave the state and talk about Antioch, people are very confused about what our situation actually is. And that's certainly not helping our recruitment efforts. So again, I think a really robust communication strategy is pivotal to the future of Antioch. There's a lot of basic things we can do to make sure people know that we're open, and we should start doing them more. We're wide open, and to be honest with you, the college is doing great. It's nothing like what, let me read some things about Antioch. It's nothing like that. We're robust, we're alive, we're energetic, we're engaged, we argue, we debate, all those things, but that's what colleges do. We are really vital and fantastic college. So I hope that we can get that word out to more future students and parents. We also make the college very affordable, also.
Thank you, Jane. I'm going to go to the next question. Catherine is asking for an update on the Antioch review.
We're working to get to a point where we can bring the Antioch review back in perhaps a little bit of a different form, but the same quality and type of work, emphasizing research and thought pieces that relate to current issues of today. We do have a plan that was proposed by the faculty to hire one position at the beginning toward reconstituting the Antioch Review. And so the faculty member would be responsible for getting it going. And hopefully, as we become more sustainable financially, we'd be able to add another faculty member or whatever else we need to run such a significant publication. But we're still working on it, and we hope that will happen. But I can't tell you exactly when.
Thank you, Jane. I had a question in the chat that I didn't want to skip over. Since you mentioned the farm, has the notoriety of the sheep on the solar farm faded away?
The sheep, wow. I think that notoriety has faded away, yes. But maybe I can take this moment to announce something. I may regret that. Vanessa, I'm sorry. You might be getting a lot of questions after this. But anyway, we're working with our solar panels and solar energy. And we have some troubles with the panels and the equipment because we don't have enough capacity to keep the grass in good condition, which means, cut well and not interfering with any of the operations of the solar panels. So I have been asked if we could bring some sheep back to be used to really just to, eat the grass and then save us from damaging some of the equipment and make things easier for us. And I would consider that because we would not be raising them for food. We just have a group of sheep there to help us with, I guess you like mowing the grass, but in a difficult place. It's hard to mow it in the place in between the solar panels. So we are considering that. Do you want to ask another question?
Yes, there are a few more questions in the chat here, Jane. Quickly to answer your question, Erwin Pomerantz, Quinn has answered them in the chat if you would like an answer to that question. Larry Foster, what are some of the other initiatives you are engaged in to try to improve the appeal of the college to students and the outside community?
Well, a lot of what we're doing is really about better supporting the programs that we have. So those include things like Coretta Scott King Center, where we are working to, actually we have program Getting to the Root, which allows people to explore more about the privilege and oppression that they experience and get down to the bottom of the important work that we as people have to do. So by offering programs like that, Antioch becomes better known. And I think that we're envisioning in a matter of a year or two, we will be able to create a position, endowed professorship of the Coretta Scott King Center, which would allow us to bring in a Black thought leader. Every year or every 2 years, we could change to a different person. From that position, the person could serve as a voice that would resonate the message that Antioch College delivers so that more people will understand our work. Could refer to the Herndon Art Gallery as another vital resource for the college that we need to uplift and support at a greater level. I can see people coming in from off the streets now coming in to see the exhibit, but if we had a true program to advertise and promote, people would be flooding in to see what kind of work that we're doing. And when they come here, they get to know Antioch better. I can say something that we would like to do, but we aren't really moving on it, mostly because we don't have yet enough money. We'd like to bring the art building and farm art building back to a place where it could be of use. Exactly, of use to what or how, I don't think we know that yet, but the building is in very good condition, and it's one of the only buildings left that were architected by the ant farm. And it's definitely something that we like to preserve and also use for our students. Almost anything we have here, small building, the kitchens, almost anything we have here now is underfunded. And we want to bring their funding to a appropriate level and then use them to get the word out about Antioch College. I don't know if that makes sense.
Thank you, Jane. I have a few more questions I'm going to ask. Steve, I was going to ask you to rephrase your question. I might have missed it. It was connected to another question, maybe as a follow-up, but there is a question about the curriculum. Jane, do you have anything you would like to speak on in terms of the curriculum?
Curriculum?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the best person to address the curriculum, but our new Vice President of Academic Affairs, Brian Norman, is leading the work in creating a new academic vision. And there are some, I would say it's more like fine tuning of our curriculum to be of more appeal to students and what they want to know and need to know now, today. We also have some work toward, I guess you would say, the gems of Antioch in terms of intellectual prowess and academic acumen. So things like sustainability, things like LGBTQ students, gender and sexuality studies, try to make us a clearer definitions that students who want to apply or consider us would respond well to. We're going to continue advertising pre-health, pre-med, pre-law, pre-education, and strengthen those areas that we're already good at. We're not really right now thinking about adding anything or changing anything dramatically. That's part of the strategic plan I mentioned, which is for 2 to 3 years. And it's really about getting our house totally in order, cleaned up, ready for guests to come and visit. And when we get that done, then we'll move to our next level. I'm sure Brian can share more information about the curriculum. And I know he'd be happy to answer if you send him an email.
I also wanted to point out in the chat, our Director of Alumni and External Relations has mentioned we have started a monthly faculty panel with Brian Norman, who is focusing on the new foci of the curriculum. You can get that information coming out of the Office of Alumni Relations. We just hosted our first panel last week on the sustainability focus, and I believe our next one should be focusing on social justice. So look forward to those emails. There's a link. There's a link in the chat for those. Jane, I have another question that has come up. I'm sure somebody tries to interview students who drop out or transfer to another school. What reasons do they give?
We do exit interviews of students who are leaving before they graduate, and we do interview of students who leave through graduation. I think the reasons for leaving vary. We've always hoped we could find some, I've only been here for 1 year, but in other colleges where I've worked, we've always hoped that we could find some common reason that if we just did that, we could help more students persist. But generally, they're very individual reasons, especially the students today. So I would say a lot relate to funding or maybe not sufficient funds to continue. Sometimes, recently, the students need to leave to work, get enough money to come back. Sometimes the students decide they want to study a major. We just had one example, a student wanted to major in business. And even though we explained how our self-designed major could provide everything she needs to have information about business and go on to an MBA program or another higher level program, she just preferred a major in business. Maybe sometimes they leave because we don't have what they decide they want to study. Sometimes it's a family situation or another reason.
Thank you, Jane. It looks like we only have one other question in the Q&A, and it's asking you to introduce your cabinet. I don't know if we have the ability to project those all, introduce everybody here, but I will encourage you to stay in the social hour. A lot of the members of the new president's cabinet will be participating in the virtual social hour. Feel free to introduce yourselves, and we'll introduce ourselves. And Jesse, we will make sure that we follow up with you directly on that. If there are no other questions, I'm going to thank everybody for joining us today. Feel free to stick around for social hour. And thank you. Have a great day.